Free Palestine! Viva, viva Palestinians! Viva, viva! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free!
Justice is our demand!
Justice is our demand!
Stand up! Stand tall! 'Cause I say you will never fall!
Stand up! Stand tall! 'Cause I say you will never fall!
With the people of Gaza, people of Palestine, who have experienced 6 months of besiegement, bombing. As a mother, I am really distressed at seeing the amount of children that have been killed and mothers. 70% of those who are killed are women and children. So it's really, really distresses me.
Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you!
A fianco della Palestina!
The Palestine solidarity movement is growing across the continent. Feeling compelled to act, people of all races, religions and ages come out to call for humanity, to call for humanity, to call for humanity, to call for humanity.
Today marks 12 years since the beginning of the civil war in Syria. What began as civilian protests amid the Arab Spring uprisings of 2011, now by some estimates has killed at least 500,000 people, displaced millions more, and destabilized the region. Where Assad's regime used chemical weapons in 2013, killing more than 1,000 people. But the man behind that bombing is still in charge. Today, in rebel-held northwest Syria, thousands of Syrians also mark this day, chanting slogans against the regime and waving the revolutionary flags. A country in ruins, and forced millions of Syrians to flee their homes, many on boats to Europe and further afield. Tens of thousands of people disappeared, many of them presumed tortured and killed in government prisons. Arab countries are slowly restoring ties with Damascus, but Syrians continue to struggle. Over 12 million people, more than half the population, are food insecure. In the meantime, Bashar al-Assad and his regime continue to hold power, continue the killing, and all these years later, there is still no end in sight. Difficult to see a brutal dictator like Assad use this moment, this natural disaster, to, as you said, rehabilitate himself on the world stage. I'm curious what you think the United States and the international community, what more they could say or do at this moment and how they should be responding. About the people of Syria, Morhaf, we began our report with these children who have only ever known a life in which their country is at war. It began before they were even born. What does their future look like?
The international community should continue isolating him until his regime goes away, because his regime, we have to say, has been a major source of instability, not only in Syria, but also in the Middle East.
Sounds of gunshots at the border between Myanmar and Bangladesh. Most of those fleeing the violence in Myanmar are women and children, and only few, like Hamid Hussein, have managed to cross the border, but he paid a high price.
One of my sons was lost while crossing the border. We cannot tolerate the torture of the Myanmar government. They killed our people. Bodies were lying in the streets over there. We were helpless. Government's people burnt our houses. They also killed our small children. How can we live there?
Thousands more Rohingya Muslims are trapped in Myanmar. The army has begun clearance operations there to root out Rohingya fighters. Civilians are caught in the middle. The violence erupted on Friday after Rohingya fighters attacked army and police posts in Rakhine State. Meanwhile, thousands of Rohingyas are living in makeshift camps on the Bangladeshi side of the border. They are without homes, without work, and without some of their family members. But they are the lucky ones.
The world's largest humanitarian crisis isn't in Syria. It's in Yemen. Thousands have been killed and millions have been displaced so far. The conflict has been going on for years. Now, the poorest country in the Arab region has become the violent playground for regional and international powers. Saudi Arabia considered the Houthi actions an immediate threat and feared this could be an opportunity for Iran to gain a foothold on their border. Saudi Arabia accuses Iran of backing the rebels, but Tehran denies any involvement. So Saudi Arabia started an alliance and began a military campaign. It's had a devastating impact, with more than 10,000 people killed since February 2014 and forcing more than 3 million people to flee their homes. Several other countries are supporting this alliance with weapons, intelligence, or logistics. Qatar was expelled from that coalition June 27. As in every war, civilians are bearing the brunt of this one. The destruction of infrastructure and restrictions on food and fuel imports means 17 million Yemenis will face famine unless they receive humanitarian help soon. But that's not all. One fear is that international aid isn't getting to those who need it the most, making a cholera outbreak all the more difficult to control. Make matters worse, 2/3 of Yemenis don't have access to clean water. So where does that leave us? Little ground has been gained, and several attempts to mediate the conflict have fallen apart. Since neither side shows any sign of giving up soon, Yemen is in a deadlock.
Muslims in the west of China are facing one of the worst examples of oppression and ethnic cleansing in the world today.
The Chinese government has interned up to 1 million people in re-education camps.
Inmates are detained indefinitely without charge and forced to denounce Islam, their religion, and praise the Communist Party.
Chinese authorities weren't just targeting adults. Her children were apparently taken to this orphanage. She hasn't heard from them since.
East Turkestan, the home of the Muslim minority known as the Uyghurs, has seen the mass internment of 2 million civilians who face physical and mental torture until they renounce their faith. The Chinese government is trying to dominate the entire region of East Turkestan and completely wipe out its people.
As the fighting rages on, both sides have been secretive about their respective casualty numbers. But in reality, Western intelligence estimates that around 100,000 Ukrainian and 200,000 Russian soldiers have been killed or injured since the beginning of the war. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of civilians are thought to have died in the past year. Most of these deaths are believed to have occurred during massacres in cities like Bucha and Mariupol, where mass grave sites have been uncovered.
Muslims don't care about other Muslims. Arabs don't care about other Arabs. Nobody cares about the Palestinians. Nobody cares about them. Can't tell you how little they care about them. Jordanians loathe them. The Egyptians loathe them. The Lebanese loathe them. They've done nothing for the Palestinians for 70 years. And yet, whenever the Israelis do anything, the Muslims across the West come out on the streets because they hate the Jews. And, you know, hundreds of thousands of people have been killed in Yemen, not a peep on the streets of Britain and other places, certainly not big protests. Bashar al-Assad has killed more Muslims in the last 10 years than everybody on every side killed in every war involving Israel since 1948, including the War of Independence. Nobody cares. The Muslims don't come out on the streets. They don't care. The only thing they care about is their hatred of the Jews. And it motivates them like nothing else because it hits at the core of their self-esteem. They can't bear it.